Hi all, my name is Todd. My story is connected with a popular poppet toy. I bet you already know about it and brought yourself such an anti-stress item. Who says yes? Write 2 pluses in the comments below the video. And who says no? Write just 1. Let's see how many people got caught in the marketing net. But come on, that includes me. But you know what separates the victim from the fighter? The fact that a fighter doesn't get caught in the net, he makes them himself. The first time I saw a poppet on the expanse of TikTok, think, what fun crap. But I set myself that never, no way I would fall for it and do not buy. I'm a man. A man says and a man does. So I changed my mind and I went out and brought a poppet consciously. Not because all my friends had it and it was on the TV or the internet. Is that clear to you? Anyway, now I'm going to exhale a little bit. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Anyway, I'm back with you. As you have already noticed, I sometimes show signs of uncontrollable aggression. I've had it for a long time since I was a kid if I'm not mistaken. But it hasn't stopped me from living my life to the fullest. And by the way, my friend Charlie, we've been friends since junior high school. He can tell you about my attacks. Hey Todd, you alright, yeah? Hey dude, I'm just telling the audience about my UA. Are you talking about your uncontrollable aggression again? Charlie, don't be stupid. You know what UA is, don't you? Why is it so hard to tell the audience that I've been successfully controlling it and everything's okay? Huh? Yeah guys, it's kind of under control. He used to be able to even bite. I have a scar on my back. Do you want to see it? Come on, no one's interested in your pimply back. But it's not pimply. You have pimples on you. Okay, stop. I said stop. Anyway, Charlie got one too. Or rather, he took it away from his sister. And he was walking around with a poppet all day long, poking it here and there. I was annoyed because you can do this endlessly. And what's the fun in it? But as soon as I picked up the poppet in the shape of a circle, which fit perfectly in my hands, I just stuck. Poke, 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 poke. And I suddenly realized that I liked it. And most importantly, it was a great distraction. Charlie immediately offered to give it to me, but I wanted to try other shapes. I brought heart-shaped, square-shaped, star-shaped poppets, and just kept popping them all day long. I started keeping records of the last time I had a UA attack, and you know, I haven't had one since I brought the toy. Meanwhile, I began to think of a plan for how I could use this toy more wisely. I was glad that it had helped me, but I also wanted to share the experience with others, for money. So Charlie and I started coming up with a business plan. By the way, yes, I didn't tell you that I attended meetings among people suffering from UA, people just like me. In my group, I was the youngest. We would sit down with the older guys and girls and talk about how our last attack went. And then the coach would summarize the behavior and, more importantly, what could have triggered it. And so, after one of these meetings, I surveyed the participants while the coach wasn't seeing, showed a poppet, and offered to take a course on aggression suppression with me. Of course, they didn't believe me at first, but I promised them that the toy just seems useless. I managed to get 5 people interested, and that was enough to start with. Charlie and I prepared for a whole week. We found an abandoned, dilapidated wooden house not far from our home. We decorated it, patched up the holes, decorated the inside, stole some scented candles from my mum, and put on some nice, relaxing music on the speaker in the background. And we bought cheap snacks and drinks. I don't think anyone's coming. They're coming. I think your plan sucks. It doesn't suck. It's Poppet, and you're going to promote it like it's a cure-all. It's all about belief, Charlie. If I get rich and open my own centre for people with UA, you'll be the head of the depression department. I can't do that. I'm telling you, you'd fit right in. We waited 20 minutes, and then 2 of the 5 came up to us. I was upset, but I didn't show it. At first, we just chatted, but these 2 weren't interested in my idea of sitting and touching a poppet. Then the girl had a fit. She just jumped out of her seat and started ripping off all the beauty we were putting on. At this point, I just reacted instantly. I grabbed her by the hand, shoved the toy in her, and said, "Tear it, bite it, chew on it." The girl started furiously pulling it from side to side. tossing it around and chewing on it. After 2 minutes, she was tired, but she was relieved, and most importantly, the toy was still intact. This is how you can unleash your anger and channel it into Poppet, with the attacks being safe for the people around you and the furniture and appliances in the house. I said the first thing that came to mind. Turns out, the guy who came in with her had videotaped the whole thing. It turned out to be impressive. They brought 2 at a time from me, and I told them that I had soaked them in a special substance with a soothing smell, so I suggested that they keep them under their pillow. But you didn't soak them in anything. I washed them with shower gel and the aloe-scented gel I got from my mum. But you tricked them. Charlie, it's all about believing. What does it matter what I soak them in? If it helps my band, nothing else matters. All that matters is the results. Adults don't fall for toys, but we are all children at heart. And if we let ourselves go out and play a little bit once in a while, would it be so bad? Maybe, Todd, maybe. But promise me that if it doesn't work out, you'll never drag me into your adventures again. Sure I will. You're my friend. At the next meeting, 10 people came. During this time, I managed to buy a poppet from AliExpress to wash them and sell them to everyone for 3 times the price. I became their confidant, for whom they preferred to buy a poppet than the mass market. After 2 months, I had a lot of money in my hands, and I even let myself rent an apartment and turn it into a kind of meeting place and poached the whole group. Charlie and I also introduced something new. During classes, the group and I played different games with the poppet, threw it at the ceiling, which I made especially sticky. After a while, the poppet would fall on a participant and he had to say his wish, which we all did. My advantage was that I understood all these people very well, because I myself have such attacks, and I understood what could help them and what could not. That girl, my first customer, suggested making fun chocolates with poppets. We melted chocolate, poured it into the toy like a mold, and froze it. We made a great gift. Next, we drew lots, wrote our name on a piece of paper, and hid it under the toy. The person who pressed the poppet would choose a partner for a frank conversation over a cup of cheap coffee in our social corner. It helped overcome a barrier of fears and insecurities in real life. I know you may ask, where did I get this knowledge? But I told you that I also have UA, and I read a lot of psychology books to understand myself. The truth is, it turned out that understanding the other person is much easier than understanding yourself. My courses and that video with the girl went viral. I managed to hook the older generation, and they were attracted to my childlike spontaneity. They got the money, I got the show. In 1.5 years, I made my first million. Of course, my main helper was Charlie. I didn't owe him anything. We became famous as the youngest crisis specialists. And a year later, my dreams came true. I opened a depression center where, as promised, Charlie headed the department for people suffering from depression. We had a lot of work to do, including involving parents because we were minors. The poppet trend slowly went away, but we weren't desperate, and we came up with more and more new ways to vent our anger in a safe environment. By then, Charlie and I had graduated high school and were on our way to a good college. Because of the popularity of our names, we were automatically accepted, which pleased our parents. Guess where we got in? Psychology department, of course. I realized that this was my calling, and I wanted to connect with psychology all my life. Ahead of me awaits many years of hard work and study. But you know, when the work brings pleasure, time flies quickly. As for me, I kept my first poppet as a symbol and a reminder of that time. For me and Charlie, it's precious. I even made my center's logo in the shape of a poppet. What do you guys think? Would you like to visit my center?
Hi, my name is Phil, and I am a millionaire at 18 years old. You will be surprised and think that the money was probably earned not by me, but by my rich parents. But this is not true. I am ready to share my story with you right now. I was born in an ordinary family. I have no brothers or sisters. My parents worked as doctors and almost always disappeared from work. For as long as I can remember, I also wanted to follow in their steps, but my father said that if I want to become a doctor, I must be 100% ready for it, because the work takes all the time. and as a return, a saved human life. But it is not always a good income. That's probably why they got married, because they understood each other. Others would simply not understand this kind of work. I can't say that our family lived comfortably. We were not poor, but we did not live on a free hand. Doctors don't always make a lot of money, as Dad pointed out. I promised my parents that one day I would get rich and they wouldn't have to work so hard anymore. They will be able to take a well-deserved rest the day before and stop worrying about other people's lives and finally take care of their own. Once in the middle of the night, the phone rang at home. An urgent call came from the hospital. It turned out that a whole family was poisoned by carbon monoxide. Their children were there. My parents rushed to the hospital without a word. My mother gave me one last kiss and told me they would be back soon. It took them a long time to get to work, and they weren't driving their own car anymore. They were in a car accident, and Dad didn't survive. Some ass cut in front of my father, and he lost control. In general, I have only my mother left. We began to live worse than we did, so I decided to find a job. It wasn't easy because I was a teenager, and I needed a flexible schedule because of my studies. My classmate Jim helped me. He heard that a neighbor of his grandmother's needed someone to take care of the garden, walk the dogs, and clean the pool. All this for a good price. Of course, I immediately agreed. So after school, I could go there without interfering with my studies. Grandma Grace was a very nice and polite old lady. She immediately explained what to do. She had a swanky mansion with a huge garden, a swimming pool, and a smooth lawn. I've only seen it in movies before. She looked like a magazine cover, too. Grandmother was old, but it was obvious that she was taking good care of herself. As a child, I dreamed of living in a house like this, having purebred dogs, drinking lemonade in my garden, and playing with the most expensive toys. Mrs. Grace praised me. I did well, and it wasn't the first time I had to do dirty work, since my parents were often away from home. I got the job done in just a few hours, and Grandma Grace offered to have a lemonade with her in the garden. I agreed. She asked about family, parents. I didn't try to hide anything, and I told them everything as it was. She took pity on me and apologized. At this moment, we were approached by a boy. He was so rude to her. I think he demanded money. The hostess smiled, gave him her card, and he left without even looking at me. This is my grandson since his parents died. I've been looking after him. Never mind, he's a well-behaved boy, but he often forgets his manners. You see, after the death of his parents, he became very vulnerable, Grace said. For some reason, she tried to justify it to me. I just said something about losing my father, but that doesn't give me a reason to treat my mother as if it's all her fault. You're a good boy, said Mrs. Grace, with a little note of envy in her voice. And so it went on. Gradually, drinking lemonade after work became our little tradition. We found more and more common topics to talk about. One day, she asked me what my dream was. I told her that I had promised my father that I would get rich so that he and my mother would no longer work. Mrs. Grace smiled. Over time, we were able to communicate with her grandson Peter. It turns out that we have a lot in common. He's not a bad guy, just a little withdrawn after the incident with his parents. I understood him very well. Then we became friends. Mrs. Grace noticed this, but asked no questions. I liked that she could respect other people's boundaries. A couple of months later, I had a birthday, and my mother insisted that we celebrate it at home, promised to cook some goodies, and skip the late shift at work. I invited Peter and his grandmother and introduced them to my mother. The evening was quite nice and interesting. We laughed and joked a lot. I haven't seen my mom this happy in a long time. Grandma praised me all through dinner and made my mother blush. At the end of the evening, Mrs. Grace took out an envelope and said that it was a gift from her and Peter, and asked us to open it after they left. That's nice of you, my mother said. We said a warm goodbye, and my mother wrapped them up with her own made apple pie, and they went home. So we went back to the living room, and I opened the envelope, and a letter fell out. I have lived for many years, but only at the end of my life I realized that a person remains a person from their own choice, and not from circumstances. You and Peter have similar tragedies, which I bitterly regret. These terrible situations with the death of loved ones did not break your upbringing and attitude to others. Your mother is lucky to have such a son. This gift to you from me so that you finally fulfilled your dream. got rich, and your mother went on a well-deserved vacation, the letter said. The envelope itself contained a check for $1 million. For another 5 minutes, there was a silence in our room. Then my mother fainted. I sat and stared at the receipt, my eyes bulging with surprise, my palms sweating, my cheeks flushed with hot breath. $1 million? $1 million? Mom, we are millionaires, I shouted at last. Mom opened her eyes at that moment, got up from the floor, and snatched the check out of my hands. We couldn't believe it. I immediately remembered my dad. I wish he was with us at this moment. Mom immediately sat down at the computer and chose the next flight to another country on vacation. We'll go on vacation, and you go to Mrs. Grace tomorrow, she said firmly. I went to my grandmother's house and she asked me, laughing, if I would continue to cut the bushes in her garden as a millionaire, and I replied that my work had long since developed into a pleasant way of life, so I would still be a gardener. It took me a long time to find the right words to express my gratitude for such a generous gift, but I think she understood me without words. I hugged her and told her that I would visit her again very soon, and she whispered something in my ear. Then my mother and I first bought tickets to another country to travel. It was the first time I'd seen my mother so relaxed. For the first time, she didn't rush anywhere, didn't run down the hall with a gurney, didn't break the news to relatives of patients, didn't worry about bills, and didn't cry. She was just resting, just like I wanted her to. After a while, my mother and I came up with and opened a small business, which I successfully run together with Peter, my already best friend. You gave me so much more, hope for good, my grandmother had whispered. So we gave it to each other.